Optics has built a platform for SQL-powered security analytics. Extending the OS query agent, Optics collects, aggregates, and analyzes a wide range of system data and makes that available to solve multiple security challenges. Their solution provides visibility across Linux, macOS, Windows, containers, and cloud workloads. Their customers are using the Optics platform for fleet visibility, intrusion detection, investigation, and audit and compliance. Visit securityweekly.com/Optics and be one of the first to see how they've mapped over 500 behavioral rules to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Data protection is a top priority with today's work-from-home workforce. However, current data loss prevention tools inadequately protect data in cloud or SaaS offerings from insider threats. Secure Circle automatically protects data as it leaves SaaS services such as GitHub, AWS, and Salesforce. The protection is transparent to users and works with any application to persistently protect data, even source code. Secure your data with Secure Circle's Zero Trust Data Protection. Begin your 30-day free trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Secure Circle. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. A quick announcement before we get started. Scythe is offering a free Purple Team workshop where attendees get hands-on in an isolated enterprise environment for 3 hours. It's scheduled for December 9th, day before Security Weekly Unlocked. You can register for this free event the day before Unlocked at securityweekly.com/Purple Team SW. Scythe will also be presenting on a Purple Team topic at Unlocked on December 10th, and they've decided to offer 3 hours of training for free. How can you go wrong? This segment is sponsored by Netsparker. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Netsparker. Joining us is the Netsparker CEO, Mr. Ferruh Mavituna. Ferruh, welcome.
Hey, Paul.
Nice to have you back on the show. Today, discussing the road to secure your organization, which is very timely as I'm tackling some of these challenges right now in these steps, Ferruh. So it's awesome.
Good. Yeah. So, I thought it would be nice to talk about this huge kind of overwhelming challenge of, hey, we got tons of websites. Where do we start? What we do? And I thought, hey, why not just explain what we normally do with our customers, right? Like very high level approach that, being secure. And majority of the time, organizations already doing some of this, but I think it's very, conceptually talking about these 5 concrete steps to get there. It just helps a lot with that motion.
Yeah, and I typically struggle with step 1. Often, it almost can be the most difficult step of discovering all of your assets. I mean, we talk about that not just in the web application context, but in other contexts as well across the organization. Discovering what you have, especially today, is super hard.
That's a very good point. So, actually, I want to talk about it because that's interesting, and also our own gameplay, playbook. And how we approach this is evolved quite a lot. Back in the day, I was more okay, now go ahead and discover. Now we realize it's more complex than that, right? In real world. And we are more talking and working with our customers, seeing different challenges, and we're constantly evolving, not only as product, but also how we help our customers to get there. Because what we do is not just here is your tool, go figure it out. We are there to, hey, look, here is the playbook. Here is how you can secure. Here is the thing that we learned from thousands of similar organizations. And let me help you to get there with best practice. So let's talk discovery in that sense. So what we observe more often, your immediate step getting into your application security in check is not, you got to find all your applications, which is good. You need to know to secure. But in reality, what we realize, and it's kind of like a 0-day or advanced APT kind of conversation. So what we observe, you already know your top 20, maybe 30 websites that are mission critical, core to your business, etc. So again, just like, when organizations talk about, oh, I gotta be secure against 0 days, especially on the network security context, or, I'm worried about state-backed attacks, whatnot. We are like, look, just do your patch management first, then you can figure out your like more advanced challenges.
Right.
But like, you're not even doing your one-on-one.
Yeah, apply security to what you know or can discover easily first that is probably critical to the business, right, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, if you're not patching your stuff, and I'm talking about all security, right? Web applications, network devices, software dependencies, all of that. Like, that's most arguably one of the easiest piece of the puzzle and easiest to get hacked by, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you're not even doing that, like, you shouldn't be worrying about like all these advanced problems. Because you got to start from that, easy to do, adds a lot of value. So similar story into discovery. So what you want to do getting started, you want to say, hey, look, this is my mission critical inventory. And possibly it's almost like top of your head, it, right? So kind of like start from there. So let's say the first step is your discovery, right? And the second step, it's kind of obvious. You know which websites you need to be securing, and maybe you started with your mission criticals instead of going expensive on this and spending months, which you got to come back and do that anyway. But like, let's start with your mission critical, which takes us to like the second, almost to, most obvious step. Okay, now you got to find vulnerabilities in them. Okay. And funny enough, finding vulnerabilities, providing you got a trusted, good, high quality tool, it's relatively easy, right? Because all you do a couple of configurations. The better the tool, you do less configurations generally. And then just run with it. There are some challenges. You might need to collect authentication details and stuff like that to have authenticated scans. But at the end of the day, you're just gonna run a scan, and now we are on the cloud and everything. It's like, hey, 8 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours at most, and you're 50 mission critical, or maybe you discovered everything. You're 500, 1,000 applications, all scans. So that's your step two, kind of the obvious step. Now this is where things get quite interesting. And let's talk about that 1,000 web application kind of organization scenario. Okay, you scanned your 1,000, so you onboarded your 1,000 applications that exist and discovered or mission critical and the mix. Now you scanned all of them. Now, in all likelihood, you're looking at something like 8 to 10,000 issues, and these might be a variety of things, right? Low impact problems, informational issues, hardening, like best practice stuff, and actual vulnerabilities, critical, medium, and all that. And this is where we see a lot of organizations, they all come up until this point, they scan their assets, but then they got stuck. And I guess that's obvious, right? Like, if you have 10,000 issues and 5 people to deal with 10,000 issues, like, what do you even do?
Right. That's the rub. You're right. You get through the first 2 steps, and then you're like, I have to actually do something about all of these, or not, but I at least have to have some response to them. Even if the response is, we're not going to fix that right now, you still have to go through the exercise of addressing them in some way, not doing something and realizing it is addressing it in some way. Maybe not the best way, but you've got limited resources, right? Let's say you don't have a team that's addressing vulnerabilities. Now you got to almost build some of that first in anticipation of what steps 1 and 2 are going to bring to the table.
Absolutely. And this is kind of where it gets into step 1, find your website. Step 2, scan your website. Step 3, draw the rest of the whole, right? Like, now it's your problem. And that's where we kind of, our vision, the product vision, the way we approach it is where we come in and say, look, this is going to be done better. It cannot be just, we got 10,000 issues, dump all these PDFs to either developers or security team. Well, security team cannot handle for sure. There's no organization with that kind of beefed up security team almost in the whole wide world. Like, we've never seen one. So it has to end up with developers, and you cannot just dump stuff on developers. That never works. So this is where we kind of dissected this step into this is the third step, right? Address. So discover, detect, and address. So in address, there are like some very obvious problems. The first of all, you have like that 8,000, 10,000, whatever, very high number vulnerabilities. And there are like two immediate things about them. The first, most obvious thing, okay, how many of them are even real? Actual vulnerabilities rather than false positives. So that's you gotta fix that problem. And historically, and still, a lot of organizations stuck here because they immediately realized, look, there is no way we can go through thousands of issues and manually confirm whether they're real or not. So they only can do, okay, then pick your mission critical, pick top 50. That's pick something sizable, which is fine. That's how you get started. And this is what we are addressing, right? Like by developing our own technology of ability to kind of triage and automatically prove real vulnerabilities, we solve that problem. And that kind of changes the dynamic in there. So that is first, right? You got to deal with false positives. And if you are doing it manually, you're not going to win that battle. It's never, ever going to work. It's never, ever going to scale. Arguably, you will not even able to do it once.
Yeah.
It's just, again, very time-consuming, resource-consuming things.
I think if I were, and I have been presented with this problem, what I might do first is look at the vulnerabilities that are coming from my web servers and the frameworks that are most popular, if you're using Java or you're using Python or using some JavaScript framework, and then build secure, repeatable environments for developers to use. So I've got a standard Apache build, a standard Nginx build that takes care of like whole classes of vulnerabilities that the scanners might have found. Regardless of priority, I'm going to do hardened versions of my web servers and my application servers. We get the dev teams, maybe in my top 50, I like your suggestion, Ferruh, right? In my top 50 applications, then rescan those, hopefully reduce my attack surface and number of vulnerabilities by a pretty large percentage. 25 to 30% would be my goal in the first pass.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I mean, in practice, that's while that applicable and some organizations with the right maturity is getting there. And it's like, it's where you shift left kind of. And whether it's the code left or like hardening setup, Docker container kind of model. But like something actually came to me, when I was thinking about all of this, we keep talking about shift left. And I realized, look, if you are not anywhere, you cannot shift left. So to be able to shift left, you got to be starting from somewhere. And that's not left, like that you start from the middle, which is like you find vulnerabilities. And then you say, oh, in my 50 applications, just like you said, now I know what my map looks like. In my mission critical applications, I know the common problems. I've got like cross-site scriptings. I've got like dependency issues, and I've got all of these. And now your immediate reaction will be, okay, I got to fix this as quick as possible, so I'm not going to get hacked in between. And your second, now you are shifting like from where you are, which is like you're at the production scanning or like staging scanning. Now you say, okay, I gotta stop introducing these vulnerabilities and fix that the call, like you suggested. And that's why you're like, okay, let's shift left. And that's your long-term plan. And your short-term plan, I'm gonna get hacked today. Let me fix that.
Yeah, let's fix the immediate stuff. Yeah. Matt, sorry, did you have comments?
No, I mean, we went through the same challenge in device vulnerability management, right? I mean, this is the same cycle we went through in those days, right? You got to weave out the false positives because security wasn't fixing doing the patching. IT was, right? So you had to throw them over the fence, right? So we've seen the same problem. I'm curious, are we going through the same maturity, Ferruh, that we did on the device management side? So false positives out of the way. I'm going to predict your next step, which is some level of prioritization around criticality, and then maybe some level of automation. Are we going down the same path on the application side that we did on the device side?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can even take it one step back and you say, oh, the way that we develop applications and the maturity and the processes that we build in, that was prior to security. And that's a similar world. Like, definitely earlier the industry is there, the faster we are here. And it's a very similar world. Like, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but to your point, think about vulnerability management. So we figured out vulnerability management kind of early on in network security device management mix But vulnerability management in web application security still sucks, for lack of a better word, because like tools don't play with each other. Like you cannot integrate stuff. Still stuff like very disorganized, non-correlated. And network security mostly fix this by actually having a lot of big key players who not only play with each other, but mostly create an ecosystem internally where everything just works together in a nice platform, right? And application security, we still don't have that.
Yeah.
And there are some motions in there, but like you're absolutely spot on. I would say we're almost like maybe 10 years behind on the maturity, scale, where, maybe 10 years later, we will say, just like network security, this is solved, this is solved, this is solved, which wasn't so 10 years ago. And now we can address these problems just like we did with network security back in the day.
That scares me a little bit, though, because we see the proliferation of applications and moving these applications into the cloud and other environments where this is going to become, I think, a very large issue that has to be addressed. And if we're 10 years behind, what does that mean for our application security over the next 10 years?
So this is actually, and I'm sure, you have experienced this as I have done. So go back to early 2000s, right? Or, where hacking, like the joke, like hack like those days. And I remember, hacking stuff, and it was ridiculously easy. On the network side, I mean, we would have one vulnerability, and that vulnerability wouldn't have been patched like for months in like production environments. You got no isolation, you got no firewalls. So the kind of world is my oyster. You got no hardening. A lot of systems are just like flat out vulnerable. Sometimes you will just scan, and like half of the stuff is public to the internet. Everything was broken almost. So I think that's what maybe 10 years ago application security was. So almost like 10 years behind of that network security world. And I think that's one of the challenges, right? As you identified, we so quickly and rapidly get into the application world, and at multiple fronts, like web services, microservices, APIs, and then all these SaaS businesses, and then the clouds. And companies are still moving to cloud very heavily now. The internal networks are, very, changing their shapes, and the industry is trying to catch up with that game. Also, we do as Netsparker, web application security scanning, we got a separate tech challenges. When we started, we were only scanning applications, and XML HTTP requests was a new thing. And today we are talking about like all the single page applications, JavaScript framework, like Vue.js kind of stuff. Now we are talking about HTTP2, so everything is rapidly changing. So technology not only needs to keep up with technological changes that we are supporting from the vendor point of view, but also you need to keep up with the actual lack of best practice on the application security development, right? We still seeing a lot of organizations got zero understanding of secure development process, which is mostly because of that. Because that, my go-to example nowadays, I ask people, look, have you ever seen, if you ask software developers, anyone, just pick random person and ask them, do you think you should be using source code repository? And every single one of them, without an exception, say yes, even if you're a single developer. So that's a very well-established best practice how you do software development. I think that's where we should be getting with application security when we talk about application security maturity. And my prediction, we got 10 years to get there, because that's kind of seems to be how long it circulates. And you can apply to network security world. I'm very sure, and you might come up with better examples than me possibly, how that maturity also happened in network security, where we take stuff granted today, but simply didn't exist 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think patch management is probably a good example on the network security side. 10, 20 years ago, if you asked them, well, what are you using for patch management? I don't know. It's some undefined process, or it's not automated. I think, especially in enterprises today, very much automated, and most have, if not all, have some solution for executing patch management.
And maybe that's the advantage in application security for a second, right? Because if we think about some of the automation in the CI/CD pipeline in the DevOps process today, maybe we can get there a little faster because
agreed.
some of that automation potentially exists because the patch might not be the way we consider a patch in the network security or endpoint space. It might be, I just need to pull the new latest package as part of my build, run it through the pipeline, boom, there it goes. We might have some underlying enhancements on the AppSec side that we didn't have back in the network security days.
Oh, I agree. I cannot remember the source, but I read a research a couple of months ago, and they were very correlating the fact that if you have a mature SDLC process, like not secure, just SDLC process, software development process with all the right pieces and the right motions and the culture in the team, introducing security to that, it's way easier than if you don't have that agile, mature SDLC process already in house, which obviously makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're already in that, and it's almost like adding a layer to that process. But if you don't have a process at all, now you gotta go so much to get there. And on that note, to be honest, a lot of organizations still don't have true agile and mature SDLC either. But it's definitely getting there because the same motions are happening.
Yeah, but you hit the nail on the head with the cultural changes and process changes that are required. I think it's not so much, in my opinion, the technology. It's changing your software process, right, to embody that agile and DevOps mindset, because it's more of a mindset than it is a particular piece of technology. So you have to change developer behavior, and as we know, getting people to change behavior is much more difficult.
No, that's definitely correct. And, you talk about, for example, the package management kind of stuff. There is even like technological advances in that, which again comes with like more modern agile DevOps environments. Products like, I think Dependapod is one of them. They kind of automatically, that's an SCA kind of product. And, what you see is, I automatically detect this an out-of-date dependency, and I'm going to actually make the code changes necessary. You just need to kind of approve kind of workflow, right? Which makes, so automates a lot of that update process, but still leaves the finalization to the individual developers. But all you need to do kind of, hey, let's merge this.
Yeah, it's hard to get developers off of fixing bugs and writing new features and fixing something that is a dependency that is sheerly for security, or even better, going back and changing their development process, which requires developing software that will change your process. But now if I'm basically configuring Jenkins and rewriting my entire, software development chain, I'm not fixing bugs and writing new features. And I feel like a lot of organizations are in that struggle.
Yeah. So if you put it all together, you come to this problem of, okay, now I've got vulnerabilities, and you said, where do we go? And that prediction is absolutely correct. So you got to figure out your false positives, right? And again, this is where we come in and say, look, we automatically confirm real vulnerabilities, right? And we will give you the proof. So your developer is not going to argue with you. They can look at the proof and say, oh yeah, this is my database information,
right,
which they wouldn't have known if this wasn't a real vulnerability. So that kind of puts you in a prioritization conversation. Now you can see which vulnerabilities are actionable, which is my second more important thing. So you first need to understand what is false positive, what is not, what is true positive, like a real vulnerability. And your second thing, is it actionable? So, and this again, kind of, some technologies like SAST truly suffers from that, because you can end up a report that says, oh, actually, we recently did some motions in that internally as well. You got, here's my 50 alerts about your source code, and these are vulnerabilities. And when you go through them, half of them not even actionable. It talks about something, but it's irrelevant. It doesn't even matter. Or
that code would never execute. I ran into that too. That code would never execute. Or I have that library and I never access that vulnerable function. So it's not actionable, to your point, Ferruh. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's even worse things look, this cannot be controlled by attacker because it's not coming from an attacker controlled environment. This is a very solid information coming from my file system, which I do control, and attacker cannot. Which is by design kind of stuff. So you got to figure out like false positives and actionable stuff. And this is where our approach is, hey, here's the real vulnerabilities. Here is the severities. And this is your picture that you're going to get hacked today. Like no questions, no what ifs, no might happen. This is, this can happen right now because here is the proof. And once you figure that out automatically, which brings us to the next step, right? So, discover, detect, address. So in addressing, now, as we discussed, like developers need to address majority of these vulnerabilities. You cannot send false positives, so you got to fix that. With that model, we fix that. But now the next problem, hey, what are you going to do? Are you going to just have like 100 PDFs and just email them around, which what we used to do. So it's not that off, to be honest, and other organizations still do. But we are like, okay, let's learn from not only network security, but let's learn from all other industries, right? Like we got to automate this stuff. So this is where we build a workflow and we say, oh, vulnerabilities are coming in. And now based on these rules, and it can be severity, risk, a bunch of other things, now create tickets to the developers, but only do it. For example, one of the filters can say, do it only and only if it's a real vulnerability with no possibility of being false positive, without any human or manual intervention necessary. So that if you think about that, and the challenge with that, you still need to map owners of websites to websites, or you need to hook it up to your CI/CD so you can map it automatically from the source committer to the actual developer. But once you do that, which is kind of an organizational challenge, but like more like a brute, it doesn't take much other than time. But once you do that, imagine that world, you find 10,000 vulnerabilities, 5,000 of them is severity medium or higher, so need to be fixed. And out of 5,000, you got like 3,000 or something very clearly proven with direct impact vulnerabilities. So we talk about cross-site scripting, RFI, LFI, command execution, that kind of stuff. And now imagine every single one of them at the point of finding on real time, create it as a ticket to your developer in their own environment that they get up every day and check their tickets. So just within their flow, no false positives. And once you unlock that, and that's what we do, and that's why it kind of changes the whole game, now you are talking about a scalable problem. Now you're not like just looking at 10,000 vulnerabilities. Now you're looking at actually actionable vulnerabilities that your developers are fixing at scale, rather than your security team bottleneck is trying to review, distribute, and all that mix.
Ferruh, can you differentiate an external vulnerability for something that's internet-facing versus an internal vulnerability? Sorry, Adrian.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we do this at the website group level, so you can do that because we know which websites are externally facing and which websites running through internal agents, for example. Right. So you can arbitrarily do it as like, hey, let me arrange groups, or you can in theory say, if it's going through an internal agent, it's an internal website. I mean, you can assume, not always correct, but you can assume that.
Sorry, Adrian.
Yeah. So lead in what you were saying earlier, Ferruh. Something I've struggled with quite a lot is, oftentimes you see security teams that don't have an AppSec expert. And it really doesn't make sense for them to be running the scans and them to be throwing the stuff over the wall and them supposedly trimming out the false positives and things like that. Have you seen, and does it make more sense to you, which I think it kind of does to me, for the whole scanning and remediation process to be managed within the development group, for them to have that AppSec expertise, that AppSec engineer within that group, or at least even if organizationally they work for the security team, they actually sit and work more full-time with the devs directly?
No, that's so let me explain. I mean, there are like multiple models, but one of the best practices that we observed are working quite well. So core security team in the global organization built the framework and like a service for their development teams to consume, right? So that's the first step. So once you have this global piece, like in our case, we built Netsparker Enterprise. And then we integrate with this single sign-on, privilege access management, whatever they have. We auto-provision their users. It's all automated. So you might have thousands of, 15,000 of developers. Like some of our customers have those numbers. And we auto-provision all of them. As they log in, they just auto-provision with the PEM integration and everything. So what they do, they build this and they say, okay, here's the training videos. Here's how it operates, and here is how it works, right? Now, here are the CI/CD plugins. And then one option is they say, okay, dear development teams, I launched this now internally within the company. Now, come to this wiki page or whatever, that internal training, maybe they might be booking there, like various models. Now, I will explain you how you can consume this. So you can use the API, you can integrate your CI/CD with these native plugins, or you can do this. And this is how it's going to work. And you can use these global workflows that we build it for you, which will only integrate through vulnerabilities with your workflows, with your ticketing systems. And so within that mix, if you have the resources, it's absolutely the best case scenario. You have a dedicated application security engineer. And this application security engineer's job is not just, oh, here's a vulnerability. It shouldn't be that person's job. It shouldn't be that person's job to say, oh, I'm going to review all the scanned vulnerabilities, whether they're real or not. That should be automated. Like if they are doing that, you are wasting such an expensive resource, such an expensive person to do kind of mundane task, right? But what they should be focusing on, okay, now I understand this vulnerability. Let me explain you risk from our product point of view, right? And then let me help you within our code base, what is the best way to address it? So at the end of the day, as a product, we can tell customers like what they should be doing at a high level. But when you're in a complex project, someone needs to jump in and say, hey, this is the best design from a security point of view. So we shouldn't be just like, oh, adding this filter here. Like, okay, maybe that's going to fix this one problem. But we've got to look,
Right.
we've got to be smarter about this, get to the root cause.
And that's really the concern is oftentimes the security team doesn't know the constraints. They don't know the context, around these vulnerabilities. It's just kind of a, hey, I'm just going to pester them weekly and check and see if this has been fixed yet. And then you get a lot of that animosity that you see between security teams and other parts of the business is they want to get this off their checklist. They don't really care about the problems that I'm facing and the reason I can't fix this vulnerability overnight.
That's remind me of one of my one of the things that happened to me when I was a pen tester. So I remember one of the members on our pen testing team was suggesting a solution to a problem that we identified in an application security test. And I read it, and I'm coming from a development background. I'm like, you must be kidding, right? Like, if they were to implement this fix, they would possibly introduce 10 more vulnerabilities because your fix is like so complex from a development point of view. It makes no sense, right? Like, there is no way they will be doing your recommendation because it's possibly worse than what they have right now. And that's the disconnect, right? If you haven't done development or if you don't understand that mindset, if you're not within that team, understand the code base, you will be kind of talking from that, philosophical point of view sometimes. Oh, just fix it.
Yeah,
but people who is going to fix it, it's not like just fix it. It's like so complex. Yeah. And you got all these, QA process, bunch of other challenges, backward compatibilities,
Absolutely. Just implement that secrets vault, but that could change the logic for the application and break things. So, Ferruh, I wanted to thank you for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly today. I apologize, we're running a little over time. Our listeners can visit securityweekly.com/Netsparker. And also make sure you check out Netsparker at our Security Weekly Unlocked event on December 10th. Sven will be on an API panel, and Mark Schembri will be doing a demo with me that will air on the event. So, Ferruh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Paul.
Coming up next, a roundtable discussion on diversity in cybersecurity. Stay tuned.